welcome to the Mount Shasta weekly Zohar study group. Tonight we're broadcasting the class a little bit differently, since the place where we usually broadcast is going under some remodeling right now. So we're doing a little different setup. Nevertheless, we're very grateful that we can actually do the streaming tonight. So thank you all of you that are joining us tonight. And tonight we're going to study the portion of Vigash. And Vigash means literally in Hebrew, and he shall approach. So we'll see what's the context, the Kabbalistic context to the biblical story. So before I jump into the Zohar study, I would like to first of all cover the biblical or the Torah narrative, so we can see what are the codes, or what is the background story we have, and how we can approach it. We've been going through the story of Yosef, and we learned that Yosef, it represents the Sephirah or foundation, or Yesod in Hebrew. So the entire story of Yosef, as we studied last week in the story of Miketz, it basically talks about how we approach or how we connect to that realm, which called Yesod, that is a funnel between Malchut, the physicality, to the upper worlds. And what happens in the context of the story in this week is that Yosef, he became the second in command in Egypt, became a very powerful leader. And if you can recall, 22 years earlier, his brothers sold him to be a slave. And as karma goes, his brother actually have to come down to Egypt because there is a famine and there is a drought that's going on in Israel that time. And they come to ask for help, and they do not recognize the brother who became a very powerful figure in Egypt, the second in command to Pharaoh. And the story goes that he recognizes his brothers, and he makes them go under a very humiliating kind of ordeal, but not from the sake of revenge, but from the sake of teaching them a little lesson. But it was not, like we said, for revenge or to get back at them. There's a higher purpose to that. But what happens is Yosef, he takes, there was a cup that he hid amongst his brother's belongings, and it was discovered at the belongings of Benjamin, his brother. And then he basically reprimands them, and he accuses them of stealing from him, etc. So what happens is that one of his brothers, Yehuda, and we're going to study what are all those codes, because we're not here again to discuss historical events or biblical events. And what happens is that his brother Yehuda or Judah, he refuses to accept the fact or the claims, the accusation that his brother Benjamin, he stole from him, and he basically approaches Yosef, and there's a confrontation between them. And if you look at the kind of on the surface, if you think about, Yehuda was in the same level like a Bedouin, like some kind of a nomad from the desert. And he comes and he faces a very powerful figure in Egypt that time. And he talks back at him. And this is there's a significant lesson for us from this story. And what we're going to learn that there is a very, very powerful codes about Yehuda and Yosef and what they pertain to us. So this is very, very important study tonight. Now, before I jump further into the context, more into the details of the story, I want to go a little bit talk about the month of Capricorn, because it's very, very, it very much pertains to what we've been studying today. So I have this little figure, like little schematic here, and it breaks down the holy name of the Yud K Vav K, which is the Tetragrammaton, and it's broken down into 4 seasons. And I'm going to explain why this is so important for what we're going to be studying today, because it's very critical to understand. Because there are 3 astrological systems, I'm not saying there is no others, but there's main ones. One is ruled by the sun. There is one ruled by the moon. The sun is usually mostly Gregorian calendar. The moon is the Islamic calendar. And there is the Kabbalist calendar that is ruled by combination of the sun and the moon. So what I'm going to explain here, I'm again not disregarding other charts. I'm just focusing on what we're studying here and how it pertains to our portion of the week. So we see each letter pertains to one element, but also to one season. So the first one, we know Kabbalistically, our year begins in the month of Aries. So this is the element of the fire. So we have the three signs of the spring, which are Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, and they correspond to the element of fire. Now the second in this chart is the summer. We have three signs in the summer. We have Cancer, we have Leo, and we have Virgo. And I know Cancer is a water sign, Leo is a fire sign, but they are considered three water signs because the summer is considered a water element, Kabbalistically. The third one is the letter Vav, and is the element of air. And we have Libra, we have Scorpio, we have Sagittarius. So these are the fall or the autumn signs, and they correspond to the letter Vav. Then we have the last of the letters, which is the letter He. The letter He corresponds to the element of Earth, and we have in that chart we have Capricorn, Aquarius, and we have Pisces. So those three, these are all Earth signs. I know again Pisces is a water sign, etc., but Kabbalistically this is how it's divided. Now we just entered the month of Capricorn last week, and we moved from Sagittarius to Capricorn. So this transition from the element of air to the element of earth is very, very important for a few reasons. First of all, because Kabbalistically we know that we have the new year that begins in the month of Aries, but actually we have two new years Kabbalistically in the year. We have one that begins in Aries, and we have the second one that begins in Libra. So we have two new years according to Kabbalah. Now one is a physical new year, the other one is a spiritual new year. So we started our new year in the month of Libra. So the entire spiritual work, everything that we've been doing the last few months, we've been basically programming our reality, how we're going, what kind of script we would like to create for the new year. So most of that Kabbalist work has been done in the month of Libra. Then we had the month of Scorpio, which was very, very a month that we actually, there is no any Kabbalistic holidays, but it was a very, very intense month where we can actually start putting into practice everything that we basically learned and everything that we connected to in the month of Libra. The month of Sagittarius is basically the last month before we basically finishing this kind of programming, and we're entering into the winter. Now we had a bridge that connects between those two elements, between the air and the earth. That was the holiday, or again I don't like to call it Jewish holiday, but it's more like a cosmic event, which called Hanukkah, which happened last week. Now why Hanukkah was such an important element for us? From few reasons. First of all, in Hanukkah we were connecting to what we call the concealed light. And the concealed light is a very, very important aspect in Kabbalah that we learn that is a source of energy. That's why we always talk about Yosef, because Yosef, or the Sphira of Yosef, is our connection to the upper realms, and that's what we've been talking about the last few weeks. So the move from Sagittarius into Capricorn is a very important move that allows us to basically to seal everything that we've been going through the last month, and basically this is right now how we put into practice everything we learn. Now it's important to mention about something about the element of the earth. What is the attribute of the element of the earth is the strong desire to receive. That if you think about planet Earth is mostly recognized or identified with gravity. So those three signs that we call in the winter, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, these are their attributes, a very strong desire to receive. Now, Capricorn, the month that we're in right now, is extremely, extremely important opportunity to look or to reflect on our desire to receive from a whole new perspective. Now, for those of you who are Capricorn, or you are a little bit familiar with the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is, as we know, it's an earth sign, and it can be very, very materialistic in its goals. People under the influence of Capricorn are usually people that are very effective in managing properties, money, wealth, etc. However, the month of Capricorn, and both the Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by the same planet, Saturn. Saturn is a very, very interesting planet, and again, I'm not getting into too much astrology, but it's very important to kind of understand the forces that are in play right now so we can harness their energy for the most beneficial way. So Saturn, it's the planet that takes the longest circulation around the sun. It takes 28 years to planet Saturn to evolve around the sun. The number 28, also interesting enough, it's based on the system of the 7. It's 4 times 7. So 28 years to circulate around the sun. Now, those who are, again, have a little bit of knowledge of astrology, Saturn is known in Kabbalah as either it could be the benefactor or the teaching planet. It's called the More, which means the guide or the teacher. Or it's More Gadol, the big teacher. Or Saturn can be also considered Hamereh Gadol, the big destroyer or big troublemaker, so to speak. And why it's important to understand for this month, because what we really want to focus in the month of Capricorn is to funnel our desire to receive for a spiritual purpose. It's very, very important to keep that in mind. Now, the month of Saturn, the month of Capricorn is ruled by 2 letters, and I'm going to get into those letters a little bit later, more deeper into in the class. The month of Capricorn is ruled by those 2 letters, Ain and Bet. Now, Ain rules Capricorn, and Bet rules the month of blackout. One is for Capricorn.
Aquarius. No? Sorry.
No. One is for Capricorn, and one is, which is in Hebrew, is Tevet. And one is for Tevet, and one is for Gdi. That is for Gdi, which is, I'm going to write in Hebrew, Gdi. So now one is the numerical value of 70, and one is the numerical value of 2. Now, for those of you who are familiar a little bit with Kabbalah, the number 72 is very, very significant number in Kabbalah, because we know that down the road we're going to get to the story of the Israelites leaving Egypt. There's what we call the 72 names of God. So the 72 names of God is concealed in the energy of the month of Capricorn. So from one hand, we have a month that potentially can be very materialistically oriented, but if we funnel the energy correctly and we're not focusing on the wrong goals, which can be all materialistic in nature, we can actually reveal very, very tremendous amount of light in this month. And this is why the story that we're going to be studying today, it's very, very important. It's a key understanding to know. Yeah. And also, I would like to take this opportunity. I want to say thank you, big thank you, to Living Tree community for their kind donation of those amazing, we received what they call the John Moyer trail mix. So we can share that with all of you guys in the class today. So thank you, Jesse Schwartz from Living Tree community for this wonderful donation. It's very delicious. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam, asher kol yom bidvoro.
Amen.
Amen. Very delicious.
Very good. Thank you.
And everybody are welcome to enjoy that. Thank you, Jesse Schwartz from Living Tree community.
Thank you.
So let's continue. And by the way, if anybody have any questions online they would like to address, you're more than welcome to send us your questions, and I'll do my best to answer. So, for those of you who were studying with us last week, there's a lot of resemblance between the last portion of Miketz and this week, and let's go over those resemblance and study what is in it for us in this week. So, in the portion of Miketz, Yosef, he was in the dungeon. And we know that the story of Miketz, it talks about putting the end to the darkness. And we spoke about it last week, how that pertains to the cosmic event of Hanukkah, which is the holiday of lights. Not the physical lights, but the concealed lights. So we studied last week how in a blink of an eye, our entire reality can change from being in complete darkness, in what we may perceive as chaos, lack of hope, there is no future, etc. How everything can change overnight, which what happened in the story of Yosef. And what happened is that Yosef, he went out from the dungeon to be number 1 in command in Egypt. Now, in the story of Vigash, there is very similar theme of miraculous twist in the plot, so to speak, because as we spoke earlier in the class, the brothers of Yosef, they were accused in theft by the most powerful man in Egypt. But that event was supposed to basically end in a beheading of those involved. But something very miraculous happened. They actually were shocked to find out that this powerful man is no less than their brother. So in those 2 weeks, we have the resemblance, or kind of the ongoing theme of a miraculous twist in the plot. Now, if we look in our own lives, how many times we can see situations that something was going in a certain way, and more than once, or more than twice, we found ourselves in a place that we saw that there is no hope. But something changed, and what was the dynamic that allowed this thing to happen? And what we learned in the story of Miketz of last week, that what allowed Yosef to rise out of the dungeon and to become, to change his destiny, he had to do internal work. And we learned that in order for us to change our reality, the change must happen first from the inside. Because we know that Yosef, he did internal work on himself. And even though he was in the dungeon, he never conceived or perceived himself as a prisoner or as a slave. He always saw himself as the ruler. And when we talk about rulership, it's not about us talking about some, external story. The rulership pertains to our own rulership in what we call the physical reality, the malchut. So what we learn is that when we are in this physical reality that we know has no light of its own, it has no sustenance of its own, in order for us to connect to that true sustenance, this must happen from within. And we'll learn about the concept of being an Israelite versus being a slave, which is a very, very important aspect for this week, because like we said in many times in previous classes, being an Israelite does not mean to be somebody from Israel or to be a Jew. To be an Israelite means that we are aligned directly with Source. There is no middleman. And that is a very, very critical and very important aspect. And this is really the whole essence of our study of Kabbalah, to maintain our connection to the Source without the middleman. Whether that middleman can be somebody who gave us money, can be somebody who give us accolades, and we are, God forbid, we depend on those outside sources to sustain us. So the whole connection that we are cultivating from the study is direct connection to the source that really sustains us with life force, with all the goodness, all the abundance. So we learned that Miketz, it taught us that in order for us to feel abundance in our lives, and again, to feel abundance, it doesn't mean that you have money, because some people may have a lot of money and they may have a lot of properties, but not necessarily they feel they have abundance in their lives. So physical possessions or social status or anything that pertains to something which is outside of us does not guarantee to feel abundance. So the abundance must begin within. And the following week, which is today, this week, it's all about taking more proactive approach, because the word, so the whole idea of Vigash, it means we're taking a proactive approach. Now the word Vigash in Hebrew is very interesting, because it's not just means to approach, it also comes from the word Leitnagesh, which means to collide. So when we're taking up in this week, particularly the energy, when we understand the concept of taking proactive approach towards what? And this is what we want to focus and discuss deeper. Now, we discussed how the whole dynamics between Judah to Joseph was completely illogical. He did something that was completely outside the realm of logic, because he was accused in theft, and he rejected the accusation. But actually, by rejecting the accusation, he was completely illogical, because he knew that he might say something that would cost him in his life. So this understanding is key element in this week. Now, we always talk about spiritual work, and we know that according to the teachings of Kabbalah, spirituality is not something philosophical. It must have grounding and must have application in our day-to-day affairs. So the first question that arises is, how do we know if our spiritual study works? How do we actually know that whatever we study in this class, we spend 2 hours, maybe after the class we read more, or we go online, etc. But we wake up tomorrow, and how do we really evaluate if what we study, it works? How do we do that? So anybody have any guess, any response?
Direct connection.
Direct connection, yeah.
Julia, she said direct connection, one-to-one.
Yeah, that's important. Direct connection,
Not
one-to-one.
necessarily she's answering the question, but she was just commenting.
Okay, so there's a term in Kabbalah. It's called la'asok b'Torah, which means to occupy ourselves in the Torah. It doesn't say to study the Torah, but it means to occupy ourselves. And this is a very important key element. This is how we actually evaluate how effective we are in our study. So our understanding of the wisdom of the Torah, which means in Hebrew guidance or instructions, it comes into play how we handle it in physical reality. So if we study today whatever we study, whatever we learn, and tomorrow we actually can put that into application, we can actually evaluate if this is something beneficial for us or not. Because again, we're not studying something philosophical here. The whole point of the study of the Zohar and the Kabbalah is to make it applicable. And again, I'm going to go back to this little diagram that I made. The letter He, which is the last letter of the tetragrammaton, represents physicality. So everything that we're actually covering in this week and the couple of following weeks, it's all about the Malchut, the physicality, because the He represents physicality. So everything we've been studying, we want to be able to make it applicable. We want to be able to put that into practice, to occupy ourselves in that. And to mentioning to occupy what we learn in Kabbalah, that our occupation should be the wisdom that we acquire from the Zohar. So it doesn't matter if you are an artist, a doctor, a driver, a chef. But if you're actually, if we are able to put that into practice and we can embody the wisdom that we learn here, and we can see its benefits, and we're discussing a lot of very important aspects like sharing, like being right call and mercy, sweetening judgments, and etc. That's how we basically can evaluate if what we study it have application. And if it doesn't, means that we're not learning, there's something we miss in the study, because it's not, we cannot blame the wisdom of the Zohar that it doesn't work, because it's all about the foundation and the elements that this reality is based on. So it's again, if we start blaming source or the universe or God, we're completely missing the whole point of being created in this reality. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So we know that the idea of occupy ourselves with the Torah is not just to study it. We want to bring what we study in the Torah into our everyday affairs. Okay? So let's get into the Zohar, into the text, and read some Aramaic. And for those of you who join us for the first time, we first of all read the Aramaic, and then we read the commentary, and then we discuss what it means, what's in it for us. So we're going to start from verse number 1 in the Zohar. ויגש אליו יהודה וגומר, רבי אלעזר פתח, כי אתה אבינו, כי אתה אברהם, לא ידענו וישראל לא יכירנו. אתה השם אבינו, גואלנו מעולם שמך. היי קרא וכמוה, אבל תחזה, כד ברא קודשא בריחו על מה? כל יומה ויומה, עבד עבידתה, כדקה חזה. בכל יומה ויומה, כמה ויצטריך, כיוון דעתה יומה שתיתאה, ויצטריך למברי אדם. אתה דורייתא קמי אמרה, היי אדם דעת באי למברי, זמין הוא לארגזה כמך, אלמלא לה תאריך רוגזה, תב לי דלה יתברי, אמר לה הקדוש ברוך הוא, וכי למגנה יתקרנה ערך אפיים. Translation. When Judah came near to him, Rabbi Elazar opened a discussion with the verse you are our father. Through Abraham, be ignorant of us, and Israel acknowledges us not. You, Hashem, are our father, our redeemer. Your name is from everlasting. It's from the book of Yeshaya. This verse has already been explained. Yet come and behold, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, He did each day the work of befitting it. When the sixth day arrived, the time for Adam to be created, the Torah came before him and said, Adam, who you want to create will provoke you. Unless you curb your wrath, it would be better for him not to be created. The Holy One, blessed be He, asked, am I called long-suffering for no reason? So as you can see, the Zohar approaches this theme or this subject matter from a whole different perspective. Couple of things. First of all, we hear here about some kind of almost like in a very fairy tale kind of manner, a dialogue between Source, God, Creator, Prime Creator, and the letters. And the letters come to Source, and they tell him, we want to create the world. And Source, and they say that they know that when the human being, us, which is all of us, will be created, we'll be prone to fail in many ways. I don't like to use the word sin because it's very religious, but the word transgression is more appropriate. Now, the thing about us humans, we are designed to make mistakes. No one from who lives on this planet is righteous as we may think we are or other people are. Everybody make mistakes. And whoever is in flesh and blood in human form right now, most likely did in past lives did some mistakes. Otherwise, we will not be born again in physical body. So the fact that we are here in physical body means we have some work to do. So the whole purpose of us being humans in this reality, we came here to create, to do something. It's not. That's why even the reality itself is not just one lane. Or I don't like to use imperfect because it is perfect. However, we are always given two choices to manifest or to create or to reveal light. In many ways, in many times, we are not always doing the right choice, and we fall. But this is really the whole essence of us being alive as human beings in this reality. Nevertheless, the more wisdom we acquire, the less likely we repeat the same mistakes. So we can elevate our abilities, our awareness, so we can elevate the way we choose things and how we operate in this reality. Now, what we learned, the energy that emanates from this verse in the Zohar, and every verse not only have intellectual or content information, but also there is certain light that is concealed within those letters that I read. So what we learn here is about the destructive power of guilt. And why guilt is important. We know that one of the things we learn in Kabbalah is that we learn to recognize the presence of the opponent in our lives. And the opponent is that force that is creating this physical reality that is constantly challenging us. And the more we elevate ourselves spiritually, that force elevates with us, because the more light we're capable to reveal, the stronger is the opponent. So this is how the game is designed, so to speak. Now, again, we cannot avoid making mistakes. We will make mistakes. And ideally, there's going to be less damaging mistakes, but nevertheless, there will be some mistakes. But what we learn here about guilt is a very destructive force. So what this verse is telling us here, if you already did a mistake, and we can, whether we have to do clearing with ourselves, forgiveness with somebody else, whatever we need to do, we have to be very careful not to fall into guilt. Guilt is very, very destructive, very dangerous force. And even more so now in the month of Capricorn. For those of you who are familiar with Capricorns, the attribute of guilt is very prominent. So I want you to be very aware of if you're already doing something that maybe you regret or you try to correct, do not fall into the energy of guilt.
There are some Capricorns today.
So we are all Capricorns in this month, actually. So we all have this, we are all prone to this energy. So again, we don't, want to, we cannot say that we are, perfect from mistakes, but if you already caught yourself and you are aware that you did something, you need to correct that, do what you need, forgiveness, whatever it takes, but do not fall into the trap of guilt. This is very, very important to remember.
Olga said, I am Capricorn. Olga is here.
Okay, so maybe she can shed some light on the guilt aspect. So that's one thing about that. Now let's continue to verse number 2. אלא קולה באורייתה יתברא וחולה באורייתה ישתכליל בגין דעד לה ברא קודשא בריחו על מה? עטיין כל עטוון קמי ועלו כל חד וחד למפרע. Translation: all was created through the medium of the Torah and constructed by means of the Torah, and as the Torah begins with the letter Bet, so was the world created with the letter Bet. What happened?
I don't know.
What, some electricity? I think there's very powerful energy going on here.
And so much snow outside. So
Yeah, it's very snowy, so we had some little, I hope the internet connection connect.
yeah. Okay.
It's connecting?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sure where it was cut off, but I'll continue. I'm going to read the translation again. All was created through the medium of the Torah and constructed by the means of the Torah. And as the Torah begins with the letter Bet, so was the world created with the letter Bet. For before the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, the Nukva, or the physical reality, all the letters were presented before Tachim, trying to...
Okay. Now.
Now it's connected?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not sure where we got disconnected, but I'm going to return to that where we started before. The whole thing about creation, we learn in Kabbalah that there is architecture, there is structure, there is no chaos. What may appear to scientists that constantly measure physical reality with certain instruments that can only work if there is a light wave. But we know in Kabbalah that there is a light which is not necessarily measured by modern science. They haven't reached that capability yet to measure the light force of creation. They can measure other forces, thermomagnetic, electromagnetic, protons, electrons, etc. But we know there are certain forces that are not yet measurable. But Kabbalah teaching us that those building blocks of creation are the Hebrew letters. And we know that those letters are not simply graphic shapes. In Hebrew, the word ot, letter, is it on, Maya?
Yes. Olga has a question, so after that.
Yeah.
I can answer.
We know that the Hebrew letters then mean signals, so they are frequencies. That's why in Kabbalah, each letter have a numerical value, which is sort of like a numerical code, a frequency. And as we said earlier, in the month of Capricorn, we have the letters of Ayin Bet, 72. And we just read that the letter Bet is very, very important letter. Because we know that, first of all, the Torah begins with the word Bet, Bereshit bara Elohim, etc. Why Bet? Because the letter Bet is a letter that channels blessing. The word blessing in Hebrew is bracha. So it begins with the letter Bet. And why the understanding of blessing it's important to us, specifically in this week and in this month? Because we want to be able to inject blessings into everything we have in our lives. Whether we take things, maybe we start appreciating things, maybe we take things for granted, maybe we don't see where blessings are in our lives. So how do we inject blessings into what we do and into what we have? Is by allowing continuity to flow in this reality. We know that the whole code name of Yesod and the name of Yosef, Yosef comes from the Hebrew word lehosif, to add. So how do we create value and blessing in this reality? By adding value. So if we don't see value in our own reality, in our lives, we can see where we can add value for others. This is really the key. The idea of, we spoke that Yosef, the name is tzaddik. Tzaddik means righteous. Who's a righteous person? He's the one who's going outwards. Is a person of a giver, a producer, a benefactor. So the way what we learn and the energy that emanates from this verse is to connect to the aspect of blessing in our lives by being a force of continuity. Because we know that death in Kabbalah means there is no continuity. there's end. There is no flow of energy. And how we generate flow of energy? By being force of sharing benevolence for others. There's a question?
Yes, Olga, she has a question.
Yes.
Would you dip more on Capricorns, especially how we shall explore this time based on Zohar?
Oh, beautiful. Study Zohar. Very simply.
Well, she's here.
You're in the right place, Olga. So this is for Capricorns that are maybe less familiar with the teaching of the Zohar, especially in this month, it's more than oxygen for you. This connection to draw sustenance from the spiritual realms. This is the biggest, and so for all of us, not just for Capricorns. But the energy in this month can be very heavy, very earthy, and very materialistic. So do not fall into the trap of evaluating the blessings in your life by your materialistic possessions, by how much money you have, how many followers you have on Facebook, etc. The real connection in this month is the spiritual connection. Now, something about Capricorns and Saturn, well, that if you have Saturn, whatever sign you are, if you have Saturn in your chart, there is a huge delay. So if you've been working on a project for a really long time...
What do you mean huge delay?
I'm going to explain. So you've been working on a project, something that you've been looking to manifest, and you don't see the results, and you have the influence of the Capricorn, which is right now the Saturn. Do not evaluate your success, but what you see with your eyes right now. If you're operating from the right place, and you guided and you connected, that you are creating value for yourself and for others, you have to connect to certainty by emunah, which comes from the word belief, also certainty that is going to manifest. So the Saturn may trick you not to. It's because you know in Kabbalah that in the energy of Capricorn, let's say you achieved a tremendous physical possessions and wealth, and if Saturn comes into your chart, say, oh, you have so much stuff, let me take that away from you, and everything disappears. Okay? So
doesn't sound good to me.
Doesn't sound good at all. But what I'm saying, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but again, Saturn is a non-physical influence. So if you know that Capricorns are really a lot motivated by physical achievement, so they have to achieve, and if they lose it, they're going to work again to achieve more, and can be like almost like a Sisyphic effort. So the teaching for all of us, which are all Capricorn this month, is to connect to the spiritual accumulation, accumulate the spiritual tools. This is really what it's all about. Okay?
Yes. So it's more how much spiritual tools we got this month and not how much money we made this month.
Not just money, whatever results we want to see. For example, I was doing a campaign last week to promote my children's book. So I will not, based on what I'm learning right now, I'm not going to sit and evaluate my success, how many books I sold. Okay? You know, when you do some work, let's say you're promoting a product, or let's say you're selling something, or you're promoting a service, you take the steps that you can. Ideally, you do your best if you're an entrepreneur. So if you work in a company, we always strive to do our best. And if we don't see the results, it doesn't mean we fail. Because nothing is lost. Energetically, nothing is lost. So especially in this month, do not fall into the trap of feeling failure because you don't see the fruits of your labor. This is a really tricky one this month. So do not be, self-judging yourself, falling into guilt, shame, or blame. Because this is the challenges that we are presented by the opponent. As we learn in Kabbalah, in the Zohar, this is what may put us into the trap of guilt. Because this is how it works. When we fall into low vibration emotions, we're feeding energetic beings. So what we call the opponent of the dark side, they constantly present us opportunity that will make us fall into low vibration emotions. And there are energetic beings that we don't see with our physical eyes. They sustain themselves on low vibration, as opposed to high vibration emotions like joy, hope, creativity, feeling happy in generally. This is really the vibration we want to maintain, because we came here to enjoy creation. So the opponent will constantly try to put us into situations where we're going to lower our vibration. Then if we fall into guilt, we're feeding those forces. So we don't want to fall into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So what we want to remember is that the letter Bet, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it's a very, very important code letter that pertains to the letter of creation of this reality, and also pertains to the word of bracha, blessing. Okay? And we want to...
שתחזיק את הספר קצת למעלה, כי...
Okay, all right.
שאתה מסתכל.
Excuse me, I wrote here something that I want to just correct here, because the letter Ayin created Capricorn, and the letter Bet created Saturn. That's what I forgot, Saturn. Okay? So the letter Bet is the letter that controls Saturn. Okay? So this is what we want to remember. And Ayin controls Capricorn, but also it controls the month of Aquarius.
So basically, the 72 names, the letters that are behind you right now, this is the letters of the month. So, I mean, I think it's also going to help us to more scan daily and more connect to that letters.
I don't want... we can do that, but what we really want to talk about here, I want to teach more practical steps. Scanning the letters, it might work for some people, but I really want to give more practical tools to actually harness the wisdom in the text. Absolutely, studying the 72 names of God, it's very important. But there's other stuff that I want to focus. How are we doing with the time, by the way?
1 second, I don't see the time. It's 15 minutes before 9.
Okay, so we're good with the time. Okay. So let's move forward. Okay. Verse number 10, 11.
תשתדל להחזיק את הספר ביד.
Okay. Now this verse is very important because it talks about 3 aspects of our soul. The nefesh and ruach and the neshama. רבי יצחק ורבי יהודה הבו יתווה לאליה חד ולען באורייתא. אמר רבי יצחק לרבי יהודה התנינן דחד ברא קודשא בריחו עלמא עבד עלמא תתאה כגוונה דעלמא אילאה וחולה דא לקבל דא ואיהו יקרי לעילה ותתה. Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda were studying the Torah one night. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "We have learned that when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the universe, He made the lower world after the pattern of the supernal world, and made the one correspond to the other. Every detail in the lower world has a counterpart in the upper world, and He is in its glory both above and below." So why is this verse telling us? It's telling us about how we identify the opponent. We know that the opponent, or what we call the dark forces, the negative, all those different names, Satan, whatever we call it, is a real force. But this force only exists in the physical realm. It does not exist in the upper realm. Okay? That's one thing. Now, what we learn here is that we, again, in this month, we have the opportunity to practice more the practice of self-reflection. For what purpose? For the purpose of where to find those areas in our lives where can we inject more light, or where we can inject more the ability to bless. Maybe we can appreciate things more. We can see some aspect to our lives where we can need to do some adjustments. Okay, but more importantly is to really evaluate, like I said earlier in the class, to evaluate our desire to receive. Like we said, for those of you maybe join us a little bit late, we spoke about we began the 3 months of the winter: Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, which are pertaining to the letter Hey, which represents physicality. Now Hey, we spoke about the lower world is a reflection of the upper world. The Hey is a reflection of the upper world, which is signified by the letter Yud, which is the source, the energy that goes beyond time and space and physicality. So how we inject that blessing? We inject that blessing by connecting to those realms which are not evident with our physical eyes. We cannot see them, but nevertheless we can strengthen our connection. And I want to get back to the whole idea of what it means to approach Vayigash, because the name Vayigash, we spoke about the story of Judah approaching Yosef. Yosef is Yehuda represents the physicality, okay? Physicality approaching the upper worlds, which implies a very proactive approach in life. And that approach, many times, like we said in Hebrew, the word Yigash comes from the word Leitnagesh. There is a collision. It's a very, very important understanding. Why the collision is important? Because physical desires have certain attribute. In spiritual desires, many times they can be perceived or in complete collision with physical desires. But nevertheless, how we bridge between the two, how we bridge between the gravitational forces of the body or physical desires, or what we call in Kabbalah the desire to receive for the self alone, and how we transmute that desire for a higher goal. We learned that previously that we transmit that by receiving for the desire to share. Very simply. Easy said, not always easy done. But nevertheless, what we learn here is we identify those desires by looking at them and see, are those desires that we have are for the self alone, or these are desires to receive for the self alone, for the sake of sharing. So this is what we want to focus, to perceive, to self-reflect, and to look at our desires for what purpose, what really drives us in our lives, in our relationship, in our business, in our livelihood, etc. Yeah?
Yeah.
Does anybody have questions online, by the way?
No,
Okay.
not right now.
So we spoke earlier that the whole idea of the opponent, it's something that grows, it's a force that grows with us. And the more we progress on a spiritual ladder with our wisdom, with our ability, it means we can reveal more light. But the more light we have the potential to reveal this reality, we have also the potential of the opponent to counter, to challenge us in that respect. Okay? So progressing spiritually doesn't mean necessarily we don't have an opponent. And this is really the trap that we might fall, because again, it's a month that is associated with physicality and material. So we might feel, some of us in this month, that we have everything. You know, we have all the money we ever desired. We have great family, great house. All the physical things and what we perceive with our physical senses are perfect. But this is really where the trap can be. So when I'm talking about evaluating and self-reflection this month, go beyond the physicality. Evaluate your desires from a different perspective. It's very, very important to keep that in mind. I also want to say something about there's an acronym that I would like to share that have to do with this, with the code name of Vigash. So we know in Hebrew we have the word Vigash, Elav, Yehuda. So we have, I'm going to explain those letters in English. So we have the word Shin, we have the word Vav, we have the word Hey, Shaveh. Shaveh. Shaveh means equal. The word equal, it's very important, because I'm not talking about equality between us, one to another as human beings. We can never be equal, because each one of us have different roles, we have different work to do, we have different levels of wisdom, etc. So the equality I'm talking about is the equality, or what we call Shivyon Tzura. We learned previously last week that how do we, if we want to attract certain high power or energy to our lives, we have to resemble or make ourselves equal in form to that which we would like to attract to our lives. So the Shivyon Tzura, or the resemblance on form, with this we pertain to higher or non-physical realms that we want to bring into our reality. Okay? So part of that job is also to identify the opponent, because if we have certain desires that we may think, or we don't even pay attention to them, we may think that we're on a spiritual path and we don't identify those opponent desires that we have in our lives, we are not going to be very effective achieving higher goals. Okay? I know some people will say, you know, I have $10 billion in the bank, I have everything I want. Well, Kabbalistically, it's great to have a lot of money, because the more money you have, you can do more things, which is wonderful. It's all about being a benevolent force in this reality. But never just stop there to evaluate your success with physical or materialistic things. It's just a means, it's not the goal. So the identifying the opponent is to look at how we are evaluating our reality based on what we desire versus what we have. Okay, does it make sense? Okay, all right. Okay. And also we are reminded that because everything is great, or let's say everything is going according to our plan, let's say we have a plan, everything is going exactly according to our plan, don't get caught off guard, okay, with your dealings with that force that exists in this reality. As long as we exist in this physical reality, there is the force of the opponent. So never evaluate your progress or your where you are in your achievements in life based on if you got all your goals fulfilled. Okay?
So being kind of comfortable this month, it's going to be a trap. I mean, not feeling bad. I'm talking about, oh, I have everything, I'm comfortable, thank you.
Well, I'm not saying it's bad, but you always have to be, Kabbalistically, you always have to be, we talk about this is like an energetic flow chart. So there's constantly an energy flowing from the upper world into this reality. This is the physical reality. And if we are satisfied with what we have, we are basically bringing death. There is no more flow of energy in this reality. And this flow of energy is represented by our desire to receive. So if we have a lot of money and we think that we're fulfilled, this is a place we want to be careful not to be.
But it's not about just money. Some people say, I have perfect family, I have perfect job, I have home, I'm satisfied, I'm okay. I mean, even when you ask somebody, how are you? Oh, everything is good.
Well, being everything is good is wonderful. I'm not saying not to be good and we have to enjoy, but always you have to be on guard and you have to be able to see beyond what we perceive with our physical senses. This is the key, especially in this month, because this month have the tendency to be more physically oriented, materialistically oriented, and evaluate things from a different perspective. So don't fall into the trap. Basically, Kabbalistically, we learn that a student of Kabbalah is somebody who's always constantly expanding, not enjoying what we have, not enjoying the great house, great cars and houses, etc. It's all wonderful, but keeping ourselves constantly growing and also extending our ability to influence in this reality, this is really the key. Okay? So let's go to verse number 11. אמר רבי יהודה, הכי הוא ודאי וברא אדם על קולה. ההד אנוכי עשיתי ארץ ואדם עליה בראתי. אנוכי עשיתי ארץ ודאי. מה טעמה עשיתי? ארץ בגין דאדם עליה בראתי. דאי הוא קיומה דעלמה למהווה קולה בשלימו חד. Rabbi Yehuda said, assuredly it is so, and he created Adam above all, who includes and completes all the parts of creation. This is the meaning of I have made the earth and created man upon it. Surely he does not need to remind us that he made the earth. So why is it written I have made the earth? Because I created man upon it, who exists to complete its unification into one wholeness. That is the purpose of the universe, and its perfection is human being. This is very, very important verse, which is in continuation what we just read in the previous verse, because it talks about what is our purpose here to be as human beings. Our purpose here, let's say, first of all, what it's not. Our purpose is not just to be famous. Our purpose is not to accumulate material goals, fame, all those things that are so much valued by many. They cannot be the goal. They cannot be the purpose. They can be only the means to an end. And what is the purpose of human being to be created in this reality? Anybody wants to respond on that question? Anybody would like to answer? What is our purpose to be here as human beings?
Being creators.
Yes, being creators, and exactly what we read, where our purpose here is to connect between these two realms, between the upper world and the physical reality. We are sort of like we are co-creators, but also we are bridging between those two realities. That's why human beings were created above animals, above plants, above minerals and other forces, so we can connect with our wisdom to those forces of creation and bring them into this reality. So this is very, very important understanding of what it really means to be human. Now, when we talk about the code name of heaven in Hebrew is Shamayim, and Aretz, which means earth. The Aretz represent our desire to receive. The Shamayim, it represents our purpose. So when we learn the story of Genesis, when God created the heaven and the earth, we're not talking about physical heaven and the earth. We're talking about the heaven. He created the purpose, and then He created the earth. He created our desire. So what we learn here again, I'm going back to that word of equal, of shivyon. We're aligning, we're resembling in form our desire with our purpose. Does it make sense? So the kodem Vigash elav Yehuda, the shin, the vav, and the hey, shaveh. We're aligning our desire to receive with our purpose. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So knowing our purpose, it's very important. We spoke about it many times in previous classes. This is not a philosophical class. We're not talking about what's the meaning of life, but it's more knowing what is the purpose of our creation as human beings. That's why we learn those tools of speech, abracadabra, I create what I speak. We're here to create. We're here to be magicians in this reality. We're here to be benevolent magicians so we can create goodness in this reality. That's why we have the play field of physical reality where we can create. Where there is lack, we feel the lack. Whether it's lack of finances, some people have money, some people don't have money. Some people have wisdom, other people don't have wisdom. Some people have, some people are good, some people are bad. So those are good they can transmute the darkness with light. So that's really the whole entire thing. But this operation in this reality, what we learn here, it should be coming, or we should generate from understanding of what is really our purpose here. Okay? Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what's the significance of this week? What we need to focus on this week? Just this
Shaveh.
Shaveh.
Equal.
Equal.
Resemble shivyon tzura. To resemble, when we talk about tzura, in Hebrew, tzura, it means form. I'm not talking about physical form. That we're resembling our desire with our purpose. This is what it's about. When we talk about Vigash elav Yehuda, which means we're taking the proactive approach. We're colliding with our lower desires. That's why previously I was reading in one of the previous verses about nefesh, ruach, neshama. We have snow outside. We have 3 levels of soul in our body. We have the nefesh, which resides in the liver. We have the ruach, resides in the heart. We have the neshama, resides in the brain. Okay. Now, what is in common between us and animals is the level of nefesh, is the animal self. Okay. Now, without being statistic, some people they're more connected to their physical desires. For some people, the entire purpose of life is to enjoy, having good food, good sleep, good sex, having good materialistic comforts, and this is really the entire purpose of their lives. The Zohar says, no, this is not what we created. We all should enjoy those things, but this is not the purpose of our creation. No. Our purpose of creation is to resemble in form, so we can constantly elevate our desires that are not just physical desires, they're desires with a higher purpose. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, so that means Vigash, that means we are actually taking action before something happens. We don't wait that, we lose something or something happens. We actually say, everything looks comfortable. It looks like I have everything. Maybe we can say, oh, what can I do or change or do better?
Exactly.
Not just look, wow, look, everything was good. So
exactly.
That's the trap. So
exactly.
Take action even though it looks like everything is perfect.
Exactly. And even if it doesn't look perfect, doesn't matter. In any way, taking the proactive approach, there is a very important Kabbalistic term. It's called the power to restrict. Okay? Now, restriction is usually perceived as something that you react to something. So something comes to you and you have to restrict. Now, Vigash is the opposite.
So, yeah.
But this is also a form of restriction. If you think about it, there's 2 kinds of restrictions. There is passive restriction, which means something comes to you. And we know that in Kabbalah, we have the 3-column system. We have the right column is a desire to share. We have the left column, desire to receive. Mm-hmm. We have the middle column, which is the restriction. Or if you compare in light bulb, you have the filament, which is the separation between the plus and the minus. So the restriction, it also pertains to proactive restriction. So you have something, or you don't have something, but you take the proactive approach, Vayigash Yehuda, which means you coming from the place of physicality, but you approach the higher realms. How do you approach them? By your desire. What you want to receive and for what purpose. So it's a very important understanding. So the Yehuda represents physicality. The Yosef represents the connection to the upper realms. So we're approaching the upper realms with our desires by coming from the right places, understanding what is our purpose as human beings. Okay? We're here to be creators in this reality, not destroyers. We're here to be benefactors to realities, to all living beings, not to cause harm, not to cause pain and suffering. If we are, God forbid, one of us, your livelihood is based on causing pain and suffering, you make a lot of money from it, it's good time right now to reevaluate where you are. Because we're here to be benevolent force. That's our purpose, to be human beings. Okay? Let's continue. Verse number 41. פתח ואמר, אדוני בחוכמה יסד ארץ כונן שמיים בתבונה. תחזה, כד ברא קודשא בריחו עלמא, חמד אלה יחל להתקיימה, עד דברה אורייתא, בגין דמינה נפקין כל נימוסין אילאין ותתאין, ובא קיימי אילאי ותתאי. ההד השם בחוכמה יסד ארץ כונן שמיים בתבונה, דהה בחוכמה קיימין כל קיומין דעלמא, וכולהו נפקי מגבה. Translation. He opened the discussion with the verse, Hashem by wisdom founded the earth by understanding. In Hebrew, understanding is tvuna. He established the heavens. Come and behold, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the universe, He saw that it could not exist, for the universe was created under the reign of the left column. The secret of Chokhmah without Chasadim, and Chokhmah cannot illuminate without Chasadim. Therefore, it could not exist until He created the Torah, the central column, called Zeir Anpin, also called Torah. So what we learn here is, again, we discussed this in previous classes, that this reality is based on mercy. But first, when we talk about creation of physical reality, its attribute is left column, desire to receive. But again, we cannot sustain this reality just by the energy of judgment, which is also the attribute of the left column. So we need the mercy. So this reality must be more leaning towards mercy. So we cannot eliminate judgment from this reality. Judgment is part of this creation. Judgment, other word that we use for judgment is boundaries. Okay? So when we talk about having the power of mercy, it means that even when we have to act with judgment, we're sweetening the judgment with mercy. And then we also talk about the middle column, which is, when we talk about columns, we talk about the right column represents by the code name Abraham, left column, code name of Yitzchak, middle column, code name of Yaakov. Yeah, Yaakov. So understanding the three columns and how to operate with them is critical in our spiritual work, in our business, in our relationship, in everything we do in this reality. We cannot just be constantly just givers. We're going to deplete ourselves for energy. We're going to become doormats. We cannot just be takers, because it's going to end in big destruction. So having the middle column is essential to our spiritual growth and to be effective creator in this reality. Now, we spoke about that the whole idea of Vayigash is being proactive. And what we also encourage, and I also spoke about this earlier when I responded to Olga, is studying the Zohar. It allows us to build up more the energy of mercy in this reality. We know that the Zohar was designed specifically to subdue the negative forces in this reality. It's not just the intellectual understanding, it's also the spiritual power in its letters. We know that in the Zohar, when we study the Zohar, especially at night, why it's night? Because night we don't have revealed light. So we reveal light in the darkness, okay? Studying the Zohar at night, we know the Zohar actually teaching us that when we study at night, the next day we are pulling like a thread of silver, or like basically a thread of light that protects us and help us in our physical affairs. So studying the Zohar is a tremendous power, each and every one of us, everybody according to your understanding, according to your ability. But connecting to the energy of the Zohar is critical to build that stock, or that spiritual bank account of positive energy of mercy. Because judgment always comes to us in different forms, and it can be financial, physical, anything that, God forbid, may be even hovering above our heads. But when we talk about Vayigash Elav Yehuda, Yehuda approached the spiritual realms. This is for us the tool that we use in the Zohar to connect to those realms. Study, see what we can extract to become more effective creators in this reality. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue. Anybody have questions, comments, observations?
Not right now.
No. How are we doing with the time, man?
1 second. Okay.
Maya Masha?
שנייה, אני בודקת.
Okay, let's
It's 9:10.
okay. ולא יכול יוסף להתאפק לכל הניצבים עליו וגומר. רבי חייא פתח ואמר, פיזר נתן לאביונים, צדקתו עומדת לעד, קרנו תרום בכבוד. תחזי, קודשא בריחו ברא עלמה, ואשלט עלי לאדם, דהי מלכה על קולה. Translation. And Yosef could not restrain himself before all them that stood by him. Rabbi Chia opened a discussion with the verse, He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. His horn shall be exalted with honor. From the book of Psalms. Come and behold, the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world and made Adam ruler over it, to be king over all. So this verse pertains to the biblical story when Yosef, when he actually revealed himself to his brothers. He said, Yosef could not restrain himself, which is a very, very important, the next few verses are very key elements, which means when he said Yosef could not restrain himself, it means he had to reveal himself. What does it mean to us? Which means when we approach the upper realms with that desire, with that connection to our spiritual purpose, when we are acting as a benevolent force in this reality, it talks about being a source of giving, a force of sharing, the upper world cannot restrain himself. It gives us a very important spiritual tool, how to open sort of, so to speak, the floodgates of abundance. And again, I'm not talking about just financial abundance. The real abundance we learn in Kabbalah is spiritual abundance, which translates also in physical abundance, relationships, health, etc. But what we learn here, the code is very, very important when we approach, when we collide with our lower desires, where we rise above those desires, and we rise above them, the upper worlds, they cannot restrain. They must open for us. Okay, it gives us very important key how to do that.
So it's up to us.
It's always up to us. I mean, in spirituality, according to the teaching of the Kabbalah, Source cannot force us to be in a certain way. Nevertheless, Source created us with a certain purpose. So how are we going to get to that point of realization, what's our purpose? It's up to us. We cannot change our purpose. Like you cannot change the fact that your heart is here, that we have two eyes, you have a nose, etc. You cannot change that. It's a default. The same thing with our purpose as human beings. We cannot change our purpose. But nevertheless, we can arrive to that realization by the way of the Torah, acquiring wisdom, acting, occupying ourselves in the way of the Torah, or by suffering, God forbid. So we want to minimize the damage, so to speak. We want to arrive to this realization and to play our roles as creators in this reality with wisdom to enjoy, because our purpose here is to enjoy creation. The purpose of creation is for us, those who are created, to enjoy the creation. Okay? So what we learn here in verse 62 is it talks about our actions as humans. We know that we live in the world of Asiya. Okay, physicality is called the world of Asiya, which means the world of action. That's why it said not study Torah, it says occupy yourself in the Torah. So your actions, your speech, your way of being, your thoughts are a reflection of what you study. It's not an intellectual study, it's not philosophical study. Okay? So it talks about how our actions as humans are really what's really we are allowing ourselves to manifest this wisdom. So what the Zohar is asking is, do we do what we want to reflect on us? Do we do what here as humans is to become more as humans, or to become more like animals? For example, when you have certain rituals that you do, or certain actions that you do, or some way of occupation that you do, are you doing that to acquire a higher level of being a human? I mean, this is what we want to ask yourselves. Whatever you do, doesn't matter what occupation you do, but does it put you higher? Does it get you closer to your purpose as a human being? Okay? This is really what we want to reflect on. That's the first thing. And this verse, when I was reading the translation, it said that he was distributed freely. He has given to the poor. Like, what is giving to the poor? I'm not talking about just giving charity to poor people. Poor in Kabbalah, it means there's a lack. Okay? So, see in your life where you can play the role as a human, because when you give something to somebody who doesn't have it, you can completely create them. You can be the creator. It can be give a flower to somebody you see in the street. Like my wife told me this beautiful story. You want to say the story?
You say.
Okay. So my wife was doing shopping today, and before her there was a gentleman that he was buying groceries, and he paid for his groceries, and then he had this big package of dog's food. And then when he was about to pay for the dog's food, he found out that he doesn't have any money. So he basically he left the bag and he went to his car. Just right behind him there was a young gentleman, maybe in his early 20s, and he saw what happened, and he said, "I will pay for it." He paid for the grocery for the dog's food. He took the bag and he went to the guy and he gave him the food. So this is an example that maybe that guy wasn't poor, maybe he didn't have just that moment, he didn't have money, but this is an example. This is an excellent example that pertains.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. He didn't ask anything. He just gave him the food and went back to his car. Yeah. He didn't even stop for it. Thank you. Yeah. He was like, "Here, the dog food," and the guy was like totally shocked. He couldn't say. He says, "God bless you and happy holidays." And yeah.
I mean, imagine that. Imagine maybe be ready for opportunities you will have in this week, where you can be a force of sharing. It can be money, it can be giving a hand to somebody, maybe giving a good advice, maybe sharing your space. Somebody maybe needs help and you can offer them something. This is what it means to resemble, when we talk about the idea of shaveh, to make yourself equal or resemble to the upper force, because the attribute of the higher force, what we call God, the universe, is the attribute of sharing.
So the guy became a creator in
that moment. Yeah. So the more we act like those forces of creation in this reality, you can take one, maybe can be one action can save the entire world. Because we always talk about in Kabbalah, there is accumulation of our good deeds versus negative deeds, like sesame seeds. Okay? And we never know what will be that particular action that tip the scales.
Yeah, and what I want to mention, that all the people in the line, maybe 8, 7 people, it's affected everybody. Yeah. This action not affected only that man and his dog. All the people, they were just it was like, the huge light you could feel in that moment. Even the cashier, she was like, "Oh my God." And people around start, like huge effect.
Yeah. So there is many kinds of good actions we can do. We know that in Kabbalah that the best actions are done in secrecy of charity. However, some actions, like in this case, you have no choice but actually do it in public. But I don't think he did that to be to receive accolades or to receive recognition. But many times the actions have to be taken at that very moment. And the universe gives us opportunities all the time. Maybe even more so in this time right now, when we can do goodness for other people. Because when we do that, we accumulate the energy of mercy into our own lives. And we know in Hebrew that tzedakah tatzil mimavet. Charity save us from death, literally.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not just talking about financial charity. It can be helping somebody, giving an advice, maybe just listening to somebody, maybe just going visit somebody who asks you, maybe they're sick, they just want you to be next of them. Maybe something of charity, which means you become a source of benevolence in this reality. It's very, very important.
That lady, a cashier, she actually said that a few days ago, in the same cashier, some guy was standing in front of a mother with a little baby, and she had the groceries. She looked a little, she looked a little poor. So the guy paid all the groceries without mother even, she didn't know. He just read and he gave her the bag and she started crying. So Mount Shasta, thank you. Hopefully it's happening all over the world, but we are talking about in this little town. And that cashier, she was like, oh my God, I see so many miracles like that. Yeah. And hopefully it's not just because of the new year, all these holidays. So hopefully it can be all the time.
Yeah, last year I can share a story that happened to me last year in the winter. I was driving in my car, just going out of the parking lot of Berryville, the grocery shop, and I saw outside guy sitting with his dog in the rain, and I didn't even think about it. I had 2 umbrellas in my car. I just came and I just gave him 1 umbrella, and he looked at me completely surprised. I didn't even think about it, but it was something that I just saw, and I just acted immediately, without need for anything in return. And I don't like to share stories when I do good, and it's not really about bragging, but it's an example that we always have those opportunities to do something good for somebody else. Always, all the time. And like you said, it can affect so many people, because many people, maybe they wouldn't even think to do that, but because that young gentleman, he did this action, he affected so many people. And today we live in the age of social media. Even more, those things are right now documented on different channels. So people are documenting, and they inspire a lot of people to do good things for others.
Inspiration is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. So what we also learn here is about, like we said, when we talk about Vigash, it's about colliding with our animal self, because the animal self, not putting down animals, but we're human beings, so our desires should rise above the animal desires, which are all based on physicality. So what we learn here is how we can rule our animal self by elevating our desires beyond them. Okay? And again, we talk about being generous. It's not just being rich to the poor, but also being wise to the ignorant. Maybe there's something you can help somebody with a piece of wisdom, with a piece of advice, or maybe by doing a kind action towards somebody who is maybe more enmeshed in ideology of harming others. You can do one action to somebody. Like I was reading this article about this African American man in America, that he converted 200 members of the KKK. He converted them to stop being basically racists. It's an amazing story. I forgot his name, but it's an incredible story. This example that with kindness you convert the most negative people. It's an amazing story.
It's like convert meat eaters to vegans.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can testify myself. In 2008, I was still eating meat, and then I watched a documentary called Earthlings, and I stopped eating meat immediately. And very short after, also dairy, because I saw that also the dairy is not different than the meat industry. And I mean, for me, it was by watching other people and also watching how those industries causing so much suffering for others. So the media can be a very, very powerful tool to spread those messages, to inspire others. How many people watch the documentary Earthlings or Cowspiracy, Forks Over Knives, many documentaries that are inspiring people to really to change their ways, to become benevolent force in this creation. So it's actually a great utilization of media for these positive purposes. Now also it's important to mention that the whole idea of the physical realm, it's a playfield to practice. That's why we always say the word amen. Amen. Amen means practice. it means craft, it means believe, it means train. So we're constantly training ourselves to be better in this reality. That's why at the end of every blessing we say the word Amen. We are empowering each other to be better, to keep improving our actions, our beings in this reality. So Amen is a very, very powerful word. Yeah. Let's move to verse number 63. והי ברנש מתפרשן מיני בעלמא כמה זנין מנהון צדיקיה ומנהון רשעיה מנהון טיפשין ומנהון חכימין וכולהו התקיימו בעלמא עתירין ומסכנין וכולהו בגין למזכי אילן באילן למזכי צדיקיה עם רשעיה למזכי חכימין עם טיפשין למזכי עתירין עם מסכנין דה בגין כך זכי ברנש לחיי עלמא והתקשר באילנה דחיי ולעוד אלא דה צדקה דאיהו עבד כאם לעלמין דכתיב וצדקתו עומדת לעד. Translation: From a human being there are 4 types of human being branches out. Some are righteous and some are wicked, some stupid and some are wise. Of these, some were rich and some were poor. They can bring merit and benefit to each other. The righteous can benefit the wicked by causing them to repent their sins. The wise can benefit the foolish by teaching them sense. The rich can benefit the poor by supporting them in their need. Through these actions, man merits life everlasting and attaches himself to the tree of life. Therefore, the scripture reads, He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor. Moreover, this charity He dispenses stands forever, namely the nukva established by it is called ever, as it is written in His righteousness, charity in brackets, endures forever. So what we learn is a continuation of what we read previously. We cannot all of us be equal. Not everybody are born with wealth. Not everybody are born with wisdom. Not everybody are born with a kind and good heart. That's why we have so many different people and characteristics in this universe, in this reality, so we can benefit each other. Imagine everybody are wealthy, everybody are smart, and everybody are kind.
So it's going to be boring.
It's going to be very boring, actually. Yeah. So we have all those different sort of poverty aspect, because lack of wisdom is a tremendous poverty, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. So, and also lack of a kind heart. I'm not just talking about lack of money, but I'm talking about other attributes. So those things that we face in our reality are opportunities for us to be givers, to sustain this reality, to be the Yosef. Like we said earlier, Yosef is the Sphira of Yesod. Yosef means to add. We constantly add to this reality because we know that this physical reality has no light of its own. It has no force of its own. The body has no force of its own. The body receives its sustenance through the Sephirah of Yesod. We receive our life force from other dimensions. If you've ever seen a dead body of a human or an animal, it's nothing. There's nothing there. That force that occupies that, it's something we cannot even understand yet. Science cannot measure that power. Even more so that we add to this force with our ability to be creators in this reality. In whatever shape or forms we are able to do. So let's continue to verse number 64. פיזר נתן לאביונים, רבי אלעזר אמר, כד ברא קודשא בריחו, על מה? כאם לי על שמחה חד, וצדיק שמי, והי צדיק איהו, קיומה דעלמה, ודע איהו דאשקי וזן לחולה. דכתיב, ונהר יוצא מעדן להשקות את הגן, ומשם ייפרד והיה לארבעה ראשים. Translation: He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor. Rabbi Elazar said, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the universe, He established it upon one pillar named righteous, namely Yesod, which is also the code name for Yosef. The righteous is the support of the world, that is, He supports the Nukva, called the world. Nukva means in Hebrew physical reality. That's the code name Nukva. It is He who gives water namely the illumination of the Chokhmah and food. I'm talking about physical food, but sustenance. The illumination of Chasadim to all, as it is written, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and branched into 4 streams. This is Yesod, named river. So when we talk about in the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden is the physical reality that receives the sustenance of the river of Yesod. Okay? So we are basically learning here, again, we are reminded of a architecture of the structure of the universe. We're reminded this reality cannot sustain itself unless we doing our share as co-creators. I mean, source sustain this reality by certain energy. We receive, we have the energy of the sun. We receive certain energy of the water. We have different forces that occupy this reality. But God did not create a road, did not create buildings. God did not create clothes. That God did not create all these things that we have to create. So we're playing our role as co-creating this reality based on what is given to us. So sustaining this reality, this is our high purpose as human beings. Aligning ourselves, resembling ourselves in form, is what we are reminded to take the role in this reality and take care of all these creatures. Okay? Anybody have questions online or something? No? How are we doing with the time, Maya?
We're good. 30 more minutes.
30 more minutes, okay, good. Let's continue to verse number 65. ומשם ייפרד, מה הוא ייפרד? אלא ההוא מזונה ומשקיה דההוא נהר, נטל גנתד קולה, ולבטר יתבדר, ההוא משקיה לדלת ציטרין דעלמה, וחמי נון דמצפן לאית שקיע ולהתזנה מתאמן, כדא עיני כל אליך ישברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם ביתו. ובגין כך פיזר נתן לאביונים דעת צדיק, צדקתו עומדת לעד, דע קני. ובגין כך היא קיימה ברזת דשלם, בקיומה שלים רשע, יראה וכעס, דע מלכות, עובדי כוכבים ומזלות. In the verse, and from thence it was parted. What is the meaning of the word parted? We spoke about that the river parted into 4 different directions. The river that sustains this reality, it also pertains to the Sphira of Yesod. So it parted into 4 different directions. He answers, it is the food and drink from that river that the garden receives, which is the Nukva. We talk about 4 directions. We talk about the directions of the north, the south, the east, and the west, which are also code names to different energies, but we're going to go into that right now. Then drink is further distributed into the 4 directions of the universe, so that all inhabitants of the world receive water from her, and none remains thirsty. How many wait for food and drink from there? As it is written, the eyes of all wait upon you, and you give them their food in due season. Thus, the verse, he has distributed freely, he has given to the poor, alludes to the righteous Yesod, which distributes and gives all of Chokhmah and Chasadim, and supports all the poor of the world. The verse, and his charity endures forever, refers to the congregation of Israel. The Nukva called charity, which because she receives everything from Yesod, stands united in the secret of peace, in Hebrew Shalom. Thus, she stands forever. The wicked man shall see it and be vexed. Alludes to the kingdom of the idolatrous Malchut of the other side, which then envies the Malchut of the holiness. This is a very powerful verse because it again talks about further about our role as human beings to be the providers in this reality. Like we know certain forces, they feed this reality. Like we have no control over them, and it's not up to us. Like even our ability to breathe, the force that operates our body, our digestive system, our lymphatic system, the blood circulation, etc. Life force, it's not ours. It's given to us. But the same way that we receive the sustenance from above, that is used here, the code name of food and water, we become those providers for others. That's what we're here for, to look for those opportunities, to find those opportunities, and that's what we say, Vayigash, it's proactive. If we think we have everything, then you would go out and we see where we can provide for others. Because this is what really sustains this reality. It's not just about how much we accumulate for us, how much money we have, how much house we have. Of course, we want to be taken care of. But our higher purpose is to be creators so we can become the providers for others. It's very, very important understanding this verse. It's highly, highly important. Anybody have questions? No? Okay. Let's continue. תחזי מלכות שמיים, יהי בי מקדשה, לקיימה כל מסכני. בגו צילה דשירותה דשכינתה, וצדיק דה יהו יקרי גבי צדקה, למיכן ולמיזן לחולה. דכתיב פיזר נתן לאביונים, בגין כך גבי צדקה, נטלי אגרה לקבל כולהו דיהווה צדקה. Translation. Come and behold, the kingdom of the heaven, the nukva of the Zeir Anpin, is the temple. It shelters the poor under the shadow of the Shekhinah. The righteous Yesod of Zeir Anpin is called charity, collector, because he bestows sustenance upon everybody, namely the poor under the shadow of the Shekhinah. Therefore, the charity collectors receive as much a reward as those who gave them donations, being a chariot to Yesod of Zeir Anpin called charity collector, which includes all the Sefirot above it. So what we learn here, that the realm of Malchut or physicality, we are the charity receiver, okay? Because we spoke earlier that this reality has no sustenance of its own. So by our connection to our upper realms, by the way we evaluate our desire to receive, we can be the funnel that provides sustenance to this reality. And again, it can be expressed in our relationship, in our livelihood, in our occupation, in our community, in all the different opportunities where we interact with this reality. This is a very, very important attribute to remember. So let's continue here. I want to talk about more about the aspects of our nefesh, ruach, and neshama, our soul, and different aspects of our soul. 3 aspects. תחזי, כד ברא קודשא בריחו לי לאדם, אכנש אפרי מארבע סטרין דעלמה, ועבד גרמי באתר דמקדשה לטאטה, והמשך עלי נשמתה דחיי מבי מקדשה לאלה. Translation. Come and behold, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created Adam, He gathered his dust from the 4 directions of the world. He created him on the site of the lower temple, the secret of the Nukva, and then drew upon him the soul of life from the upper temple, the secret of Binah. So what it talks about here, when we created from the earth, which means when we talk about earlier about the physical reality, the earth is connected to the letter He, from the tetragrammaton, from the Yud K Vav K. So we are creating our physical reality is the lower aspects of our being. But nevertheless, we have all those 4 different elements, and they pertain in our body, in our life force, in 3 levels of the soul. Now, the earth is connected to the animal soul that resides in our body, which resides in the blood. Okay? Let's continue. ונשמתה היא כלילה בתלת דרגין, ועל דת תלת שמהן אינון לנשמתה, כגוונה דרזי לאה, נפש, רוח, נשמה. נפש הוא כמוה דאי תתאה מקולה. רוח איהו קיומה דשלטה על נפש, ואיהו דרגה אילאה, עלה, לקיימה עלה בחולה, כדכה חזי. נשמה איהי קיומה אילאה על קולה, ושלטה על קולה דרגה קדישה אילאה על כלהו. Translation. The soul consists of 3 grades. and therefore has three names in Hebrew, just like the supernal secret, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. The Nefesh, as has been explained, is the lowest of them all and comes from the Nukva, which is the physical reality, or the element of the earth. The lowest of the 10 Sfirot. The Ruach is its sustenance. It rules over the Nefesh, being a higher grade, and is drawn from Zeir and Pin to sustain it well in everything, both in Chokhmah and Chasadim. When we talk about Zeir and Pin, so when you talk about the lower Nefesh, which is the physicality, Zeir and Pin pertains to those 6 realms. This is Malchut, this is the Zeir and Pin, those 6 levels. So those sustain the physical reality. And it comes to it, like we learned from the funnel of the Sphira of Yesod. The Neshama is the supreme existence, namely the light of Binah. Binah means wisdom in Hebrew, which is higher than the light of Zeir and Pin, and the light of the Nukva, the Ruach, and the Nefesh. It reigns over all, being a holy grade superior to all, to Ruach and Nefesh. So when we talk about Binah, so again, we have those 3 levels within us, potentially. Not everybody connected to those levels, but like I said earlier, many, again, not being statistical, many are just going to the lower animal, which pertains to the level of Nefesh. But we know that Nefesh is ruled by the Ruach, which resides in the heart. So this is Nefesh, this is the Ruach, and then we have the Neshama, which connects to the Sphira of Binah. And when we talk about, again, a reminder to the energy of this week, how we can resemble, become Shaveh in form by our awareness that we can connect to all the aspects of our soul, all 3 of them within our life. How? By resembling form to the higher force, that we become force of creation, this reality. So if we want to elevate ourselves spiritually, the first thing we do, we evaluate what kind of desire do we have. The level of desire defines our spiritual progress.
There are some people say that they don't have desire, or they don't know what to desire.
Yeah. So for those of us that are in a space that we don't know what to desire, is actually a wonderful place to be, because ask and you shall receive. If you think that you have everything, like there was a guy that wrote on Facebook from Israel, he said, I feel stuck right now. So I wrote him, why don't you go and help somebody? And then within 2 minutes, I don't know, like a bunch of people wrote him what kind of things they would like his support, because he had some kind of occupation that he was actually able to support those people. And immediately he was not stuck anymore.
He needed to go and help them.
He said, okay, yeah, tomorrow we have this. He's an animal activist in Israel. So this lady, she wrote on his wall, yeah, tomorrow we have this, and he's not stuck anymore because he's already in the flow of supporting others. So the first thing that you feel like, if you don't know, have goals, go find somebody to support. Be a creator for somebody else. Whether support them financially, support them with advice, support them with something that you can help them. And you have a goal already, because your goal is to be a benevolent force in this reality, whether for humans or non-humans. Thank you again for Living Tree Community for the wonderful donation of your amazing trail mix. Incredible. How are we doing with the time, Maya?
9:40 now.
Okay, 10 more minutes. Let's continue talking
20
about...
more minutes.
9 what?
9:40.
9:40, okay. ואילן תלת דרגין, כלילן בהו בבני נשה, לעינון דזקן, לפולחנה דמערהון, דהק בקדמתה, אית בנפש, ואיהו תיקונה קדישה, להתתקנה בה ברנש, כיוון דעתי ברנש להתדקאה בהי דרגה, התתקן להתעטרה ברוח, דאיהו דרגה קדישה, דשריה על נפש להתעטרה בי ברנש, ההוא דזכר. The 3 grades, the nefesh, the ruach, and neshama, are included within men. who attain them by serving their master. Thus, first, man has a nefesh, a holy vessel with which to be corrected. But when he is intent on purification through this grade, a man is corrected. Thank you. Man is corrected and crowned with the ruach, the holy grade that dwells on the nefesh, with which the deserving man is adorned. So what we learn here that our intention defines how we can progress in this path. If our intention is to rise above our animal level, we can create the opportunity to go beyond that, which we have to translate through actions, not just by intention. It have to be manifested through actions. Let's continue. כיוון דסתלק בהו בנפש ורוח ועל והתתקן בפולחנה דמערי כדקה יאות כדי שריה עלי נשמה דרגה אלאה קדישה דשלטה על קולה בגין להתעטרה בדרגה אלאה קדישה וכדן איהו שלימה דחולה שלים בכל סטרין למזכה בעלמא דעתי ואיהו רחימה דקודשא בריחו כדא להנחיל אוהבי יש מן excuse me מן אינון אוהבי אילן אינון דנשמתה קדישה בהו. Translation: once a person is elevated by nefesh and ruach and attains correction through proper service to his master, neshama, a supernal holy grade that reigns over everything, dwells on him, so that he may be adorned by the highest holy grade and be perfect in everything, on all sides, and thereby merit the world to come. He is then beloved of the Holy One, blessed be He, as it is written, that I may cause those who love me to inherit substance. Those who love me refers to those in whom the Holy One, Holy Neshama, abides. So what we learn here when we talk about serving the master, I'm not talking about becoming servants, but what it means here that we align ourselves with our purpose. We know, we spoke earlier in the class, that we have a purpose as human beings. That purpose is defined by, or it's been created by the intelligence that created this physical realm, this physical universe. And when we talk about serving the master, which means we serve the master plan of creation, we serve the purpose of our role as human beings in this reality. So evaluating again our desires is a key element, especially in this week and especially in this month, to rise above the physical wants that we have, to put them in the right perspective. And that's how we talk about those core names of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, so we can rise in those levels in our well-being and also in how we interact with others. Okay? Let's continue. Verse number 23. רבי יהודה פתח ואמר, כי הנה המלכים נועדו, דא יהודה ויוסף בגין דתרוויהו מלכים, והתקרבו דא בדא, להתווכחה תרוויהו כחדה בגין דיהודה, התערב בי בבנימין, והווה ערב לגבי דאבוי בי, בהי עלמה ובעלמה דעתי. ועל דא התקרב כמה דיוסף להתווכחה עמי, על עסקה דבנימין דלה למהווה בנידוי. בהי עלמה ובעלמה דעתי, כדא אנוכי אערבנו מידי, תבקשנו אם לא הביא אותיו אליך. והצגתיו לפניך וחטאתי לאבי בכל הימים, בהי עלמה ובעלמה דעתי. Now this verse talks about how humanity shares important attributes with the moon. We talk about the moon, the nature of the moon, that he has no light of its own. The moon receives light from the sun, okay? Now just like the moon, we don't have our own light. Our life force is given to us from the upper realms. Just like the light of the moon is derived from the sun, also a human being's spiritual light is derived is derived from the bordering dimension known as Zeir Anpin. So we know that the physical realm receives its sustenance from the upper realms. We cannot receive direct light from the upper worlds because we'll get burned. So the Zeir Anpin is sort of like a filtration system through which we receive the energy, okay? Light can only flow when these two worlds are enjoyed. Just like a lamp can only illuminate when connected to electrical current. On a metaphysical level, a woman corresponds to Malchut. We know that a woman, we're not talking here about gender. Physicality is described as a female aspect, the vessel that desires to receive, left column. So woman corresponds to Malchut, and male denotes the realm of Zeir Anpin. So one is the vessel, the desire to receive, and one is the giver. So the male and the female, the right and the left, the plus and the minus. Okay? Just like in electricity. Intimate relations between a man and a woman thus join Malchut and Zeir Anpin. So we have the physical embodiment of the supernal energies that when a man and a woman, they join together, is the right and the left, they join together. Okay? So that's kind of the physical embodiment of that what we discuss here. So this pleasure that accompanies this union is the light of the upper worlds, feeling Malchut. When our consciousness is directed towards revealing this spiritual light during sexual relations, the entire world is brightened and elevated. We know that in our physical body, the realm of Yesod, or the sphere of Yesod, it's reflected in the sexual organ. Why this is important? Because when we spoke earlier about aligning our desire, even sexual act can have a completely new approach or new understanding. Of course, we all want to enjoy sexual actions. It's something that we want to derive pleasure. But even deriving pleasure from the sexual action can come with a higher perspective, with a higher understanding. That we're here as human beings that are ruling the animal self. If we're here just to enjoy as much as we can physical pleasure, we miss entirely our purpose to be here. So sexual action, we derive a tremendous amount of pleasure. But even in this particular act, we can reveal a lot of light and inject light if we have the proper approach to it. Not just taken from a physical or like animal self understanding. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So Rabbi Yehuda began the discussion with the verse, "For the kings were assembled. These are Yehuda and Yosef, who were both kings. The two of them came together to dispute because Yehuda became surety for Binyamin and pledged himself before his father in this world and the world to come. He therefore came to argue with Yosef on account of Binyamin." We know that we spoke earlier in the story of the Torah. Yosef hid a cup in the possession of Binyamin, so he can accuse him later on in theft. Now, I'm not going to go into the code name of what the cup represents and what Binyamin represents. But what we're here to derive from this verse is how we are, like we said, Vayigash, how we colliding between the two worlds with our desire, how we elevate ourselves from what we perceive as the physical reality by connecting to the upper world, by overcoming a certain aspect of ourselves. We can be very, very animalistic in nature, if it makes sense.
Why Yosef did that?
Excuse me?
Why Yosef did that? What was the purpose?
Well, the purpose is to intrigue or to stimulate the physical reality. And again, I'm pertaining to the codes, what it represents. The purpose is to stimulate the physical reality to become a force of creation. Because like we know, we have the way of the Torah, we have the way of the suffering. Now things can come to us, and then we can awaken to spiritual truth. Like how many stories we know of people that went through tremendous hardships, some tragedies, and then they awaken to higher understandings. This can be one way to go through life. Another way, we can approach that from a proactive point of view, without waiting for something to come at us and to awaken us to that. Because again, our purpose here is not to be like lower beings. Our purpose as human beings to live with understanding of a high purpose, of connecting to the high purpose. Nevertheless, to enjoy the physical pleasures, but from the understanding of what is our purpose in this reality. So when we talk about Yosef hid the cup, it's to stimulate, to create some kind of friction with physical reality to awaken that desire. Because without him doing that, there will not be that action to come to approach him and to awaken that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I mean, yes, but some people don't know all the story, so they probably don't know what you're
Well,
talking about.
yeah, for those of you who were earlier, I said the story earlier, so I'm not going to repeat the story again, but that's the whole point of him hiding the cup. The code name is that upper realms will awaken in us the desire, if desire is not awakened from us within. And the desire is to connect to our higher self as human beings. Okay?
10 more minutes.
Anybody have questions online, Maya?
No.
Okay. רבי אבא פתח, verse number 32. רבי אבא פתח ואמר, יפה נוף משוש כל הארץ, הר ציון, ירכתי צפון, קריית מלך רב. היקרא רזה דמהמנותה איהו, יפה נוף, דא איהו יוסף הצדיק דכתיב בי, ויהי יוסף יפה תואר ויפה מראה. משוש כל הארץ איהו חדווה וחדו לעילה ותתה. הר ציון ירכתי צפון בגין דבחולקי, כאם אשכנה דשילו. הר ציון דא ירושלים. ירכתי צפון הכי הוא ודאי לעילה ותתה. Translation. So this verse talks about the 10 dimensions, what we talk the 10 sephirot of the tree of life. These are the building blocks of reality. The dimension known as Yosef or Yesod is neighbors, is the one that's closest to our realm. So we talk about those 10 dimensions where the physical reality, Yosef is the closest one to us. Okay? And actually that dimension that funnels the energy from the upper worlds. So it's the closest one to us, and it's the gateway through which all the spiritual energy of the upper world flows into our world. Our connection to Yesod, also the code name of Yosef, is strengthened by the virtue of this passage, infusing our lives with tremendous amounts of positive energy. So Maya, responding to what you asked earlier about what if people don't have desire, so reading this verse or connect to the energy of this verse connects us to higher desire, to connect to the upper realms, not to be stuck in the physical realm. Okay? Rabbi Abba opened the discussion with the verse, beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, Mount Zion, the uttermost parts of the north, the city of the great king, from the book of Tehillim, Psalms. This verse is the secret of the faith. Beautiful for situation is Yosef, the righteous, of whom Scripture says, and Yosef was good looking and well favored. He is the joy of the whole earth, the gladness and joy above and below. Mount Zion or Zion is the uttermost parts of the north, is the portion, Yosef's portion, where the tabernacle of the Shiloh stands. Mount Zion is Jerusalem, namely the Nukva, the uttermost parts of the north is assuredly above and below. For both the upper temple, the Nukva, and the lower temple are considered to be the aspect of the north, namely the illumination of the left of the Binah, the secret of the illumination of Chokhmah. So what we learn here is that Yosef, or the connection to that upper realm, it opens for us, it's a gateway to connect to a tremendous amount of light. But this connection, like we know, that something from above cannot be awakened until there is awakening from the below. And we talk about Yosef, he was good looking and pretty. It's a code name of the beauty which is beyond physical beauty, because we're so accustomed for the things that we see or we perceive with our five senses. But there's beauty to connect to which cannot be perceived with physical senses. It's beyond physicality. So this verse is allowing us, or is helping us to awaken that desire to connect to those realms. When we talk about Jerusalem and Zion, Yerushalayim, it's a code name. The word Yerushalayim, it means the place of completion, of wholeness. Yerushalayim, it comes from the word Shalem, complete. When we awaken in desire from below for connecting ourselves with the upper realms, we're connecting to the upper Yerushalayim, which is a place of completion and wholeness with the upper worlds. Okay?
Four more minutes.
Okay, I'm going to do one more.
לקנות לך שעון קטן, שיהיה לך שם על השולחן.
אוקיי. בגין דחד התפלג לאליה וקודשה אילאה יתאר וברנש דנאם בארסי ולה יתאר להשגחה בעיקרה דמערי האי הוא התקשר ברזה דמותה ומתדבק באתר אחרה ועל דעת דוד מלכה הווה כאם להשגחה בעיקרה דמערי תדיר חי לגבי חי ולה נאם בשנתה לטעמה טעמה דמותה ובגין כך הווה מתנמנם כסוס שיטין נשמתי ולה בשלימו. Translation: When midnight comes, supernal holiness is awakened, but a man is asleep in the bed and does not awaken to regard the glory of his master. He becomes attached to the secret of death and cleaves to another domain, to the other side. King David therefore always woke at midnight, careful of the glory of his master, alive before the living one, and he would never sleep long enough to taste death. Thus he slept like 60 breaths of a horse, 60 breaths less one. So, we're going to close with this verse. We learned that we speak a lot here about physicality in upper world, etc. We know that when we go to sleep, only 1/60th of our life force maintains in the body. So in many ways our body is almost dead when we're asleep because most of the essence of the body leaves and we rise to upper realms. In previous classes we learned that we all rise to those realms according to our merit, what we earn in our spiritual work, in our study, in our actions, etc. And what this verse is giving us actually spiritual support that we can connect to higher realms before we go to sleep, and ideally if we do some study at night, so we can elevate ourselves while we sleep to higher worlds so we can receive that sustenance from the upper worlds, because that sustenance is not given to us automatically. You have to put effort into it. That's why the study of the Zohar allows us to connect to higher realms. In many ways we learn about the story of Yosef because Yosef was a master in the art of dreaming. But before one can become master in those realms, one needs to attain the wisdom how to climb on those levels. So we're very fortunate to have this wisdom this week, this incredible light to be revealed. Very grateful for the Zohar, and I hope that you guys all got some beneficial and helpful tools for this week, and I encourage you to keep studying more of that amazing portion of the week in the Zohar. So thank you everybody, and God bless you all, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalom.
Shalom.